welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. I'm going to switch the game up now. We're a few weeks out from the start of football season, NFL and college. So today is all about college football and the whole new world that we're moving into. Man, this stuff is crazy and it's happening real fast. But before we get to that, you know what you got to do. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you can be made aware whenever new content drops on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, please go ahead, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come on up. You can subscribe right there. If you enjoy the content, give us that like, that thumbs up, that 5-star review, whatever it is on your podcast platform. And finally, make sure you share the podcast with friends, enemies, family, whoever, people that you know love sports talk, people who want to hear a different voice and a different outlook on things than what they might hear from the mainstream sports media. You know what happens when you do that? We rise in the algorithm, helps more sports fans find us, helps us find more sports fans. So let's get right to it. All right. College football. I've been waiting all summer for college football. I've been waiting all summer for the NFL. I love football and the football season. Funny quick note about me: when I was growing up, basketball was my favorite sport. Loved basketball. That's 80s, 90s, 2000s, right? Loved basketball. Still love basketball, but now the sports have kind of flip-flopped for me. I love football so much more because football is much more about the competition. It's much more about the leagues, whereas basketball is so much more about the soap opera. And I don't really appreciate that nearly as much. And while also, you know, in my estimation, the quality of play in the NBA and in basketball has kind of degraded from what I saw coming up versus what football has done. So anyway, that's my take. So I love football. I've been waiting for football. I'm so happy it's back. Practices are all started up. They're all running college and pro. And we got huge bombshell news, right? So even before last season, we heard that the SEC was expanding, right? SEC, resident powerhouse conference, consistently winning national championships, whether it's LSU, whether it's Alabama, whether it's now Georgia, who's the standard bearer in the country. At the end of the 2000s, the first decade of the 2000s, it was the Florida Gators. So the SEC, resident powerhouse conference. Now, quick note, like I always say, we always hear SEC this, SEC that, but the bottom half of the conference is the same as the bottom half of any other conference. So, you know, I don't really buy into that whole thing that the SEC is so far and away superior to any other conference. Now, don't get me wrong, it's an incredible conference. We see it. They're winning championship after championship, but there's a lot more things in play than that. But at the end of the day, they got to win it on the field, and they're doing that. So shouts to the SEC. Now, we saw them expand. They grabbed Oklahoma and Texas. And this season here will be Oklahoma and Texas's final season in the Big 12 before they move to the SEC. And that's two more banner programs in college football historically that will be joining the most powerful conference, right? And so we saw that happening, and we were wondering kind of what's going to happen with the Big 12. We know the Big 10 is the second best conference in just about every year. And at the top, they have teams that, for the most part, can compete at the very top of the Big 10, that is, with the SEC. But when we get into that championship level, they're not quite there yet. Ohio State, some years we saw, 2014, them win the national championship, but they made a couple playoffs since, but they haven't been able to get back to the top of the mountain. Michigan has built their program up. We see that they are, as of the moment, the best team in the Big 10, but they're not ready yet for the SEC either. So anyway, we saw the other conferences and we're wondering, well, what are they going to do? We see the SEC just getting stronger and stronger, but the Big 10, they made a huge move earlier this offseason, and they grabbed UCLA and USC. USC, the biggest name in college football in the Pac-12, and we'll get to them in a second because, boy, are they in trouble. Was the expression ship be sinking? But yeah, USC is the banner football powerhouse and football school in that conference, and they are now moving to the Big 10 along with UCLA. UCLA, the banner basketball program in that conference. So the two biggest names in the conference and the two big money-making sports, they were already gone. But now we found out just a couple days ago, Oregon and Washington are now going to be moving to the Big 10 as well. So, whew, all right. Now you got Oregon, the Ducks, and Phil Knight and that Nike money. They're heading to the Big Ten, as well as the Washington Huskies. So now the Big Ten has bolstered its ranks with like four really good programs, right? So they've taken that from the Pac-12. Then you find out Colorado, about a week or two ago, had already made the deal that they are going to be leaving the Pac-12. I guess they saw the writing on the wall, and they are heading back to the Big 12. They had been in the Big 12 previously. They're heading back now with Coach Prime, and that's a big thing for Deion Sanders, because being back in the Big 12 will really open up the recruiting grounds, the fertile Texas recruiting grounds. Not to say that he wouldn't be able to get Texas guys, but now he's going to be able to get a whole lot more, because he's playing in that him and his school being Colorado, they're going to be playing in that Big 12 footprint. So that's great for him. Now you get Colorado joining the Big 12. Okay, that was the first one, but Colorado is not necessarily a huge historical brand. But then you get some really good teams. Now the Pac-12 is falling apart. They're hemorrhaging at the seams, and so what you see is other teams are getting out of there before it's they're completely, underwater. And now you have the quote-unquote four corner schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and what was the fourth one? So it's Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah are now all going to be joining the Big 12. So that bolsters the Big 12 and clearly makes them the third best conference in college football, and leaves the Pac-12 with Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State. So the question is, what are those schools going to do? What is the Pac-12 going to do? I think it's pretty much over for the Pac-12, and that's pretty sad on a college football side, and it's sad for a conference that was really elite in terms of the Olympic sports, which is like non-football and basketball. That conference is pretty much done. I mean, unless they can raid the Mountain West, and realistically, they're not going to be able to do that. They don't have a television deal. They don't have much of anything. They be in the Pac-12. And so now the question is, where do Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State end up? And the problem is, maybe Stanford tries to go independent, but how can they do that without a TV contract? That's the big thing. And realistically, Stanford, that's not a school, being such an incredible academic school, that doesn't necessarily have the long time football pedigree like a Notre Dame does or Michigan does. Their people don't care as much about football as those schools do. And so, you wonder what's going to happen there. What is going to happen? What are they going to do? And then, what's going to happen to the Olympic sports? It's tough. Cal, yeah, pretty much irrelevant. Oregon State, same thing. Washington State, same thing. I mean, what's going to happen? You got to wonder, are some of these schools going to get absorbed by the Mountain West, or, something like that? I don't know. But it's bad overall. It really stinks if you're going to be a former Power 5 team and get knocked down to Group of 5, because the money's going to suffer. And with the money suffering, that makes all the other amenities and all the other sports programs and all the other things at the school that were paid for, or paid for in part by football revenue, all that stuff is going to be hurt. So it's tough, man. But at the end of the day, it's all about money in this college football thing. We can put away the fake narrative about student athletes and this and that. At the end of the day, it's all about money, plain and simple. And that's what we're dealing with here, because you look at it, and the reason all this realignment is taking place is because of the TV deals. That's all there is to it. So the new Big Ten is looking like this: Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Purdue. Big conference, got some really good teams there. And what the Big 10 is doing, smartly enough, is they're putting themselves in position with this new playoffs thing, which is this is the last year of the 14 playoff. Next year it's going to go to 8, and I'm sure within the next few years they're going to renegotiate it and try to get this thing out to 16, because what you're going to have is, you're going to have these super conferences with a bunch of really good teams in it. And so a bigger playoff means more money, right? Bigger TV deal, more money. That's what it keeps coming down to, right? So the new Big 12 is going to be Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, Indiana State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas Christian, Texas Tech, West Virginia, Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah. Another power conference that is going to clearly be the third best conference in the country. And depending on the year, may have some really quality teams that might be able to compete. Probably won't win a national championship, but you never know. So you got some really interesting stuff going on. And I think part of all this realignment, it's going to make this college football season even more special because you're going to see for a lot of teams, it's the last year in their conference, and that's going to make it special on a historical level. Definitely looking forward to seeing kind of how that plays out. You know, when you look at your USCs, UCLAs, Washington, Oregon, those type of teams, or Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12, Colorado, Arizona State, Utah, all leaving the Pac-12 and heading to the Big 12. And then again, what's going to happen with the remainder of the Pac-12? This is, history is going to take place here. If you're a college football fan, this is definitely something to look forward to. And so now there's that. And so we got to sit back, we got to watch, see how this season shakes out. And then, of course, how the following seasons shake out and how all of this affects what will likely end up being in a few years a 16-team national championship playoff. So those are my thoughts. So what I want to know from you, what are your thoughts on what's this doing to college football? Are you going to miss the traditional rivalries? Are you going to miss the traditional conference structures? Do you see college football continuing to change and evolve? Do you think college football itself should completely break away from the NCAA and do its own thing? What are your thoughts? Leave your comments in the comments section. Can't wait to hear from you. Can't wait to respond to them. I'll be back next episode, and I'm out. Peace.